And once more, I'm wishing all of you, I don't know what the proper term is for Memorial Day. I hope you're celebrating Memorial Day in a way that best suits you. Because after all, it is remembering people who've died in the service of their country. I also hope you're enjoying yourself today. I hope you got the day off work if you work. And I certainly got the day off today. Should have been mediating this afternoon, but the place where I mediate's closed. Therefore, I got the day off, which is kind of cool. So I got the whole afternoon off. How about that? That's pretty good. The reading today is, well, let me read it and then see what you think. It's called The Lie of Competition. First quote is from someone I know everybody's heard of, and that's Desmond Tutu. Sorry, I got distracted because something popped up on my screen. I had to get rid of it to carry on. He says, "My humanity is bound up in yours if we can only be human together." And of course, he was born and grew up in South Africa. He became the Anglican Archbishop in South Africa. And for a good part of his life, the thing he had to contend with was apartheid, which was separation of whites and others, and mainly whites, blacks, and others, I think. I think there were three categories there, I'm not sure. I never went down there, so I don't know. And he, like Martin Luther King Jr., figured out that our ultimate evolution is tied up together. Our ultimate survival is tied up together. We don't do this by separating people out into racial groups, religious groups, or whatever groups. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. In Ernest Holmes' in Words That Heal Today, the quote, I can't find it actually. This is Words That Heal Today, and I can't find it in there. It's obviously in there somewhere. But anyway, this quote is from Words That Heal Today. The paragraph reference in my book, which is from 1999, is wrong. So I don't know where it is in the book, because the parts I'm reading refer all about Jesus' teachings. Life has set the stamp of individuality upon everything, from a blade of grass to a person. There is unity at the center, variety at the surface. These variations are separate and distinct, without being separated or isolated. More about that in a second. Reverend Ryan goes on to say, I don't know about you, but for years I bought into the idea that my success was dependent on being in competition with those around me. I don't mean a friendly pickup game of basketball. The competition I'm speaking of is this idea that we have to go it alone and get ours before someone else takes what we perceive as belonging to us. This idea of rugged individualism screams every person for themselves, or each person for themselves, if you like. The result is an energy that puts us in direct competition to, the result is an energy that puts us in direct opposition to and in competition with everyone and everything around us. This framework acts from the belief that there's a limited amount of good, of abundance, and actually a limited amount of everything. We then believe we have to elbow and shove our way to getting ours because there isn't enough to go around. This is not to say we shouldn't be open to self-improvement, to growth, to transformation, and to evolution. All those things are good when we start from a space of enough. It's when we begin the conversation from a space of frantic energy a mentality of lack, a belief in rugged individualism at all costs, and competition at the expense of others. That is when we get sidetracked. When we start to have honest and frank conversations about these frameworks, we begin to see that they're not supportive of anyone. The more we lean into the truth, the more we can understand the need and the call for new frameworks, new beliefs, new ways of living, and of loving one another. From this space, the need for competition is replaced with the understanding that there is more than enough for everyone. When I first learned concepts like this, it was actually taught slightly differently, but it's got the same result. I was taught, instead of looking at getting a bigger piece of the pie, that the object of the exercise was to increase the size of the pie so that everybody got more. Now, obviously, it's a metaphor and it doesn't apply to everything, just like what Reverend Ryan's saying here is a metaphor. It doesn't apply to everything. It's not to say that we shouldn't compete in the Olympics, which actually, as you know, are coming up very shortly. They're going to be in Paris in the summer. But what I heard was that the best athletes, yes, they want to win, but the person that they're most in competition with is themselves. That they're trying to be what they did previously. And obviously they're out to win a gold medal if they can, or a silver or a bronze, whatever it turns out to be. But that's what I was taught. Is it true? I don't know. I can only tell you that when I went rock climbing, I wasn't trying to be better than anybody else, because that wasn't the object of the exercise. The object of the exercise was to see if I could climb more and more difficult ways up the rock faces. And that was the objective. So I was really in competition with myself. Helped because I was in community. How does this apply to business? Well, it's complicated. Sometimes the companies that do the best are the ones that realize that competition is good. Why? Because it drives them to do better. You know, when there is no competition, then there isn't much of an effort to strive to do better. There's the old story, which you probably heard, of course it's fictional more than likely, that there was one lawyer in this small town, and he or she were actually not doing very well. They were really on the poverty line. And then another lawyer came into town and they started to thrive because the two lawyers, I guess, were getting people to pay them for business, and they were in opposition to each other. So there's got to, in other words, there's got to be a balance in life. If you come, to me, the bottom line of all this is, hang on, if you come from a place where you believe that there is enough to go around, then you're going to have a different experience in life than if you believe you come from a place where there isn't enough. And you find that oftentimes the people in life who do the best are the ones who give away the most. You know, I think the person who is the one who gives the most to charities and good causes in the world and gives billions of dollars is actually the recipient of the biggest divorce settlement ever. And she distributes her goods to the poor, the needy, just causes, good causes. So I think the way to look at life is, how can I make life better for myself and other people at the same time? That's where I'm coming from with all this. How can I make life better for both myself and everybody else? And it's, well, that's it. The affirmation kind of says that. It's, I recognize there is more than enough for everyone. I recognize that there is more than enough for everyone. I don't find it necessary to belabor these points. They're pretty obvious to most people. Maybe not to everybody, but they are to most people. And if you've been around this teaching long enough, then it's very familiar to you. If you haven't and all this is new to you, then maybe it is a new way to look at life and say, well, there's enough to go around. How do I operate in that environment versus the environment where scarcity is what rules? So, you know, we're just watching a recording. It was actually from the TV from yesterday, from Sunday. And one was a documentary about some monkeys that have been brought to this particular island decades ago to see how, just to observe them and see how they interact as groups and everything. And then when the hurricane that devastated Puerto Rico, because the island's pretty close to Puerto Rico, also devastated this island, they thought maybe this whole group of monkeys, because they lived there without competition from other animals, they looked at the island from the air, they thought it must have been wiped out, but somehow the monkeys, most of them, like 90% of them, survived. And guess what? After they survived this, they were more friendly to each other. There was less competition among them because they banded together to figure out how to survive. A lot of the vegetation on which they could have, you know, survived got blown away. But guess what? Whole bunch of other stuff washed up on the seashore, seaweed washed up and other things, and the monkeys started to avail themselves of this. But the point was that the monkeys adapted and they actually started getting more friendly to each other after this because they realized, hey, what there is here, it's going to be enough for all of us. And it was, you know, and they did well. So that's all I got to say, except to remind you, Reverend Lisa will be on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock-ish Central Time. I'll be back tomorrow evening, somewhere around about 5 p.m. So until then, enjoy the rest of Memorial Day. Or whenever you watch this, enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, namaste. Take care.